It was an under-the-radar crazy day in the Big Ten, outside of the USC-Michigan game, of course. This is an embarrassing loss for USC. I know they lost by 3. I know that Michigan is a good team. And by the way, when they lost to Texas, I didn't sell my Michigan stock. I just didn't think they'd win the football game, and they wouldn't have if not for, one singular play, which is what it came down to. I don't know how much more exciting of a weekend of college football it could have been. You had a Hail Mary in Boulder. You had craziness in Provo. You had USC-Michigan. It was just magnificent across the board, as always in this beautiful, wonderful sport. But the reason this is an embarrassing loss for USC is Michigan made it very, very clear that they had one thing they can do on offense. And I asked the question going into the game, how are you going to score points? How are you going? Well, the answer is you're just going to push USC around. USC's defense, make no mistake about it, is an improved unit. They are an improved unit. They are not there yet. And they got embarrassed in this football game. Michigan had, wait for it, 32 passing yards. 32 passing yards. 32. There were individual completions longer than 32 yards that teams completed all over the country. Michigan needed 32 yards to score in the air to score 27 points. Michigan manhandled USC, and it was evident from the first half. USC's offense got off to a sluggish start. I had USC's point total predicted right on the money. But how did Michigan make it work? They ran the football. They ran the football. This was a clinic from Sherrone Moore. And number one, Michigan saves their season, because if you lost this game, you weren't going unbeaten the rest of the way. And the college football playoff, that wasn't going to happen. That's still back into the fold. That's the first thing. And second thing, Sherrone Moore, this had a very Penn State feel to it. Of, you know what? We don't need to score 40 points. We don't need to throw the football if we can just run it. Michigan's a one-trick pony, but it's a tough trick to stop. And if you can't, this is what it's going to look like. So for any team that plays Michigan this year, if you have no ability to slow down their rushing attack, then you have no ability to blow them out. You could still win the football game, and Michigan's operating on a very razor-thin margin. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong here, and maybe I'm just going into my Michigan hater mode, which is sarcasm, of course, because I'm told all the time that I hate Michigan, and that's news to me. But Michigan, that executed a flawless game plan here. Do you think you can win every single game that you play? Do you think you can win all but one game the rest of the season throwing for 32 yards a game? Yeah, I don't. But can you win throwing for less than 200 yards a game? I do, because I've seen Michigan do that many a times. And Michigan found their groove on the offensive line. They found the rushing attack. They've got a dynamic tandem to complement Donovan Edwards and what Alex Orji brings to the table running the football. The defense finally looked the way that we expected. You know what? This game told me plenty about USC, and it told me plenty about Michigan. But it told me even more about Texas, because I don't think that USC team is bad. I think they're good. I've been one of their biggest fans the entire offseason. And Michigan went in there and manhandled them in the line of scrimmage. Go back to the Texas game. The Longhorns went into that same environment and dominated. Texas is the number one team in the AP poll right now. They're probably deserving of that, even though I'd still pick Georgia as my top team just because they had one bad game. Doesn't make them not the best team in college football, but boy, that says a lot about Texas, because the Longhorns were able to do whatever they were wanting to in that football game. And it turns out that remnants of last year's Michigan team is still in there, which is why I thought they had one of the highest floors in college football this year. I don't think they can go worse than 8-4. I predicted them 8-4, 9-3, depending on how a couple things go. That's probably where they're still headed. That's a good football team. It's limited with their offensive attack. Not having Colston Loveland probably hurt them in the passing game a decent amount. He's been their best receiving target all season long. But that game told me plenty about Texas. And yeah, I think that Texas team is really good. I don't think going in Michigan, because remember, after that game, you start to wonder, is Michigan, are they TCU? Are they falling off? And if you go back and listen to what I said after that game, that was not my takeaway at all. I didn't think Michigan had played their best football game. I thought they'd play better games, and I thought they would have better games ahead, and lo and behold, it came here. Thought USC would win the football game. I was wrong on the pick, But I was right in saying that Michigan is not going to bottom out. And they didn't. So I think that's just an impressive win for Texas. But that's an embarrassing loss for USC because Michigan made it very clear they had no interest in throwing the football. I don't know what they thought the Wolverines were going to do. You watch them just run the football against Penn State, and it's one of two things. This is why I say 3-point loss in a heck of a football game is embarrassing for USC. You either couldn't make the schematic adjustment to they're not throwing the football and they can't throw the football, which I doubt because I think D'Anton Lynn's a really good defensive coordinator, or you did know that and you just couldn't stop him. You just couldn't stop him. You're USC. This is year 3 for Lincoln Riley. It's a revamped defense, but that was not a good day for the Michigan defense. Or for the USC defense, rather. It wasn't a terrible day, but it certainly wasn't a great one. So, good for Michigan. Good for Michigan because that was just an incredible game plan, and I was able to watch the first half of that game and then the end of it because I was calling a football game, and the trenches were dominated. Not won by Michigan, they were dominated by Michigan. Let's stay in the Big Ten for a moment because, oh dear, Nebraska. Oh dear, Nebraska. I don't know what Cornhusker fans did to deserve this. All they have done is show up time and time and time and time again, however many consecutive sellouts it's been, basically my entire life, I think. And they keep getting punched below the belt. I just, those poor fans. Good for Illinois. Good for Illinois. Surprising people, myself included. Luke Altmaier is a completely different football player. That guy's a gamer. I enjoy watching him play. Brett Bielema has got a good football team. I don't think they're a great football team. I think they're a good one. I think Nebraska is still a good football team. They just, something about that stadium. Do they need to play at a neutral site like Kansas for their home games to break the curse of one possession losses, of having their hearts ripped out of their chests? Friday night, 31-24. In overtime. I mean, you miss a field goal, you have a wide open guy in the end zone. Right after Dylan Raiola misses a wide open guy in the end zone on 3rd and 3. Didn't you feel like Nebraska was going to miss a field goal? Because I certainly did. And then they did. And then they go to overtime and lose. And that's just, it's a gut-wrenching loss. No mistake about it. The question becomes for Nebraska, how do you respond? How do you respond? Season's not over. You can still have a great year. Not a good year. You could have a great year by Nebraska standards in, the last several. Because making a bowl game, well, that'd be a good season. But having 8 or 9 wins, it's still feasible. They're not going to be undefeated, obviously, going into Ohio State. But you can still win a lot of games before that. You can still win a lot of games after that. I was heartbroken for Nebraska fans. Because they had to watch that unfold again. It's the same story. Corporate needs you to find the difference between these two pictures. They're the same picture. You could do that with about 17 Nebraska games in the last 2 weeks, it feels like. Tough times for the Cornhuskers. I think they will be okay. I still think they're a good football team. I think Illinois is just a lot better than I expected. And they went in, and Illinois deserves full props. I mean, that's a heck of a win for Brett Bielema and company. So, also, they didn't win. I will shout out UCLA and Deshaun Foster. They had LSU tied at the half. I thought LSU was going to boat race them. They didn't cover the 22.5. Props to the Bruins. They played a good game. They did lose, and then they've got Oregon this week at